So then the last substantive issue that I'm going to discuss is the two things actually, is land formalization and regularization, and then we'll talk just very briefly about land reform. You'll hear land tenure specialists or land tenure experts talking about the need to formalize land or regularize land. And really that's a very simple term. All it means is we'd like to encourage the transfer of land from a customary recognition to a formal recognition. In other words, we know that there are groups over here who are living under a customary or informal tenure environment, and by formalizing or regularizing their tenure, the state will recognize their right to be there, and that enhances, or the idea is we hope it will enhance, the security of the people living under that system. Formalization can happen in a couple of ways. It can happen through titling. Titling itself can happen in two ways. You can either title an entire country, very complicated, expensive process to do that, but Rwanda is a country that recently engaged in a systematic titling of all property across the country. Or more typically, governments can engage in sporadic titling, might be considered to be demand-driven. You will title when a community or a group asks for the government to come in and provide those title documents. We talked already about certification, which is usually a recognition of use rights, and if the use rights are recognized by the government, that's a formalization of a right to use something. An example of an ongoing formalization or regularization of rights is happening in Tanzania today in the Sagcot corridor, where the government of Tanzania is helping to demarcate the boundaries of villages, helping villages step through the process of engaging in land use planning, and then collecting demographic information about villagers, and within the broad confines of the village, identifying individual household level ownership claims over home, garden plot, and then farming plots. And when the government goes through that process, demarcate the village, go through a land use planning, and then recognize individual household rights, that process is called the deliverance of a Certificate of Customary Rights of Occupancy, or a CCRO in Tanzania. It's a hard process. It can take quite a long time. But the idea, again, is that it helps deliver increased security to people on the ground. Okay, now the final section of today's talk is about land reform. Land reform is a very political, controversial subject, typically, and so sometimes land reforms work very well, sometimes they're counterproductive. I'm not going to say a whole lot about land reforms today, other than to say that typically they're designed to strengthen land tenure and property rights, and can be accomplished. You can accomplish a land reform through a couple of different paths. You can change the law to recognize people's rights to be where they are, to use things. You might formalize informal claims, as we were just talking about, or you might achieve a land reform by reforming the process of transferring and allocating use rights. And some land reform over the last decade has been spurred by the World Bank's Doing Business project, which has looked at how cumbersome it can be to transfer land formally through different ministries and offices and agencies. So reforms can take place in a number of different ways, sometimes again aimed at overcoming bureaucratic barriers, sometimes though designed to achieve different sorts of policy ends. Sometimes expropriation and eminent domain are used to achieve the goals of land reform. Again, it's a very controversial approach to dealing with land issues, and really not consistent outcomes. Latin America has seen a lot of land reform to try to upend the system of large landholding in Latin America and make land more accessible to smallholders. You've seen examples that are rather similar in a country like Zimbabwe, where the government expropriated properties from white landholders and redistributed them to smallholder black farmers. In a country like South Africa, the land reform process after the end of apartheid was based on a more voluntary approach, but has had limited success in redistributing land from large holders to smallholders. So again, a controversial topic, not one that USAID strongly promotes today.